Our perfect suburban Saturday ended the moment I realized the guest bathroom door had become the tomb of my marriage, and I held the key. The scent of charcoal and freshly cut grass was the perfume of our perfect life. Our Saturday afternoon barbecue was in full swing, a scene straight out of a suburban dream catalog. My husband Mark, the king of the grill and the man who could fix anything, was flipping burgers, his laughter echoing across our perfectly manicured lawn. Our neighbors, Dan and Chloe, were here, as they often were. Dan was discussing stock prices with another friend, and Chloe was beside me, topping up my wine and complimenting my hydrangeas. She was more than a neighbor. She was my confidant, my morning coffee buddy, the sister I never had. Our little bubble of domestic bliss was so pristine, so seemingly shatterproof that I never saw the crack forming until it was a gaping chasm at my feet. It started with the guest bathroom sink. "Honey, it's making that gurgling sound again," I mentioned to Mark as I came back outside with a fresh bowl of potato salad. He wiped his hands on his apron, a world's best husband novelty gift I'd given him. "I'll take a look. Probably just an airlock in the pipe." That's when Chloe chimed in, her voice bright and helpful. "Oh, our sink in the master bath does the exact same thing. Drives Dan nuts. What do you think it is, Mark?" "Come on, I'll show you," he said, gesturing with his head toward the house. "It's a quick fix if you know what to do." It all seemed so innocent. Mark, the resident handyman, helping out a friend. Chloe, curious about a shared household annoyance. They slid the glass door open and disappeared inside. I didn't think a thing of it. I went back to chatting with our other friends, ensuring everyone had a drink, playing the perfect hostess in my perfect life. 5 minutes stretched into 10. The burgers were starting to look a little too charred on one side. Dan was now deeply engrossed in a story about his disastrous fishing trip last year. No one seemed to notice how long they'd been gone. But I noticed. A tiny cold knot was forming in my stomach. 10 minutes became 15. I excused myself, telling everyone I needed to grab the ketchup from inside. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant murmur of conversation from the patio. I walked down the hall toward the guest bathroom. The door was closed. I stood outside, my ear close to the wood, feeling utterly ridiculous. What was I expecting to hear? The sounds of plumbing. For a moment, there was nothing. Just silence. The cold knot in my stomach tightened. Then I heard it. It wasn't the sound of a faucet or a wrench. It was a whisper. A low, feminine whisper followed by Mark's unmistakable, rumbling murmur. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself I was being crazy. They were just talking. But why were they whispering? Then came the sound that shattered my world into a million pieces. It was a giggle. Chloe's giggle. It wasn't her usual loud, friendly laugh that I heard over the fence every day. This was a low, throaty, intimate sound that I had never heard before, and it made the hair on my arms stand on end. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the door open, to confront them, to unleash the hurricane of fury and betrayal that was brewing inside me. But then, a strange, icy calm washed over me. Screaming would give them the satisfaction of a scene. It would make me the hysterical wife. No. They didn't deserve that. They deserved something colder, something more calculated. My eyes fell on the old-fashioned lock on the bathroom door. It was a relic from the original 1950s construction of the house, a skeleton key lock that we'd always meant to replace, but never had. The key, a heavy, ornate piece of brass, was still in the lock. My hand moved as if it had a will of its own. It felt strangely heavy, disconnected from my body. I wrapped my fingers around the cold metal, took a deep, shaky breath, and turned it. The click of the bolt sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my marriage ending. For a few seconds, there was silence from inside. Then the doorknob rattled gently. "Hey, hon, door's stuck," Mark's voice called out, laced with a casual annoyance that made my blood run cold. The rattling became more frantic. "What the hell?" I heard him mutter. Chloe's voice, now high and panicked, whispered something I couldn't make out. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned, my back pressed against the wall, and slid my phone out of my pocket. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over one name: Dan. I took one last look at the locked bathroom door where my husband and my best friend were trapped, and I pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Then a familiar, cheerful voice on the other end. "Hey, what's up?" "Dan," I said, my voice eerily steady, a stranger's voice coming from my own throat. "Can you come inside for a second? Use the sliding door, and come alone." The pounding in my own ears was so loud I could barely hear his reply. A confused, sure? Everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just ended the call and stood there, my back against the cool hallway wall, a sentinel guarding the tomb of my marriage. From inside the bathroom, the noises were escalating. The gentle rattling had turned into frantic, angry shaking of the doorknob. Then came the first heavy thud against the wood. Mark. That was his frustration, his brute force solution to everything. "What the hell is wrong with this thing?" he grunted, his voice tight with a panic he was trying to suppress. I heard Chloe's muffled sobs. Good, let her cry. Let her feel even a fraction of the suffocating pressure that was crushing my chest. The sliding glass door to the patio slid open and then shut, and Dan's footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. He came around the corner, a half-eaten hot dog still in his hand, a look of mild concern on his face. "Hey, you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." His smile faltered as he took in the scene, me, pale and rigid, staring at the guest bathroom door, from which another loud bang emanated. "Dan," I said again, my eyes locking with his. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't cry. I simply stated the facts, letting them land in the quiet space between us like stones dropped into a perfectly still pond. "Chloe is in the guest bathroom, with Mark." His brow furrowed in confusion. "Okay? Is the sink flooding or something?" The innocence in his question was a punch to the gut. He still lived in the world we had all inhabited just 20 minutes ago. The world of perfect lawns and friendly barbecues. He didn't know he was standing in the rubble of it. "No, Dan," I said, my voice dropping even lower. "They're in there, together," and I locked the door. Understanding dawned on his face, slow and agonizing, like a sunrise in reverse. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes darted from my face to the trembling door and back again. The hot dog slipped from his fingers and landed on the floor with a soft, pathetic slap. He took a step toward the door, his movements jerky and uncertain. "Chloe," he called out, his voice cracking. "Chloe, what's going on?" The banging stopped. A dead silence fell over the hallway. From inside, I could hear frantic, desperate whispering. Then Mark's voice boomed, falsely cheerful and dripping with sweat. "Dan, hey man, we're in here. The stupid door is jammed. Chloe was just showing me that thing her sink does. Can you try it from your side?" The lie was so thin, so pathetic, it was almost laughable. Dan ignored him. His eyes, now dark with a pain I recognized as my own, were fixed on the door. "Chloe," he repeated, his voice louder, pleading. "Talk to me." For a moment there was only the sound of her crying. Then her voice, wrecked with panic and shame, came through the wood. It was the sound that hammered the final nail into the coffin. "Mark, do something," she shrieked. "Tell them. Tell them we were going to tell them everything after the trip. Just get us out of here." The trip. A single word that detonated a whole new bomb in my mind. They weren't just sneaking around. They were planning. They were planning a future. They were planning an escape. They had a timeline, an endgame that didn't include either of us. The blood in my veins turned to ice. This wasn't just a moment of weakness or a sordid little affair. This was a conspiracy. Dan stared at me, his face a mask of utter devastation, the word trip hanging in the air between us like a ghost. He looked at the door, then at me, utterly lost. But I wasn't lost anymore. That one word had given me a horrific, searing clarity. I took the heavy brass key out of the lock and slid it into my pocket. The word trip did something to Dan. The pleading in his eyes hardened into something brittle and sharp. He looked at me, a silent question passing between us. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. We were no longer husband and wife, but allies in a war we hadn't known we were fighting. He didn't rush the door. He didn't scream. He simply walked back to the patio, his movements deliberate, robotic. I followed him, my legs feeling like lead. He slid the glass door open, and the cheerful chatter of the barbecue washed over us, a surreal soundtrack to our private apocalypse. "Hey, everyone," Dan announced, his voice shockingly normal, though his face was a ghostly white. "Change of plans. The party's over." A confused murmur rippled through the guests. "What? Why? Is everything okay?" someone asked. "No," Dan said simply, his gaze sweeping over our friends. "Mark and Chloe have decided to get a head start on their romantic getaway. They've locked themselves in the guest bathroom to finalize the details." He delivered the lines with the deadpan precision of a seasoned actor. The air crackled, drinks were lowered, the laughter died, strangled in people's throats. From inside the house, the banging started again, more frantic this time. "Dan, what the hell are you saying? Open the door!" Mark yelled, his voice ragged with fury and desperation. I stepped forward, my voice clear and ringing in the sudden silence of the backyard. "He can't, Mark. I have the key." I held up the ornate brass key for everyone to see. It glinted in the afternoon sun, a small, beautiful object of immense destruction. "And I've already called a locksmith. Not to open the door, but to change the locks on this house. You have 30 minutes to figure out your next move before your things are on the curb." The guests were frozen, a tableau of shock and discomfort. Some looked at the ground, others exchanged wide-eyed glances. One by one, they started gathering their things, mumbling awkward goodbyes, fleeing the scene of the car crash. They didn't want to be here for the aftermath, and I didn't blame them. Dan and I stood side by side on the patio, watching our old life disintegrate. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say. We just listened to the muffled screaming and pleading from inside the house as our friends made their hasty exits. When the last car had pulled away, leaving only the sound of sizzling burgers burning to cinders on the grill, a profound quiet settled over the yard. The banging finally stopped. They must have realized it was useless. We stood there for what felt like an eternity. Then Dan finally turned to me, his eyes hollowed out, but clear. "My lawyer's number is on my phone. Feel free to give it to yours. They can sort out the details." He nodded towards my house. "You're a strong woman. You'll be okay." "So will you, Dan," I replied, and I meant it. We were two survivors on a scorched battlefield, but we were still standing. He walked to the side gate, not even glancing back at the house that held his wife. I stayed on the patio watching him go, The locksmith arrived 20 minutes later, a kind-faced man who didn't ask a single question. As he worked on the front door, I gathered 2 garbage bags. I went into my bedroom, the one I had shared with Mark, and methodically emptied his closets and drawers. I did the same for Chloe next door, using the spare key she'd given me for emergencies. I piled their belongings in 2 neat heaps on the curb between our houses, a monument to their betrayal. Finally, with the new locks installed and the locksmith gone, I walked back to the guest bathroom. I slipped the old brass key into the lock. I could hear them inside, talking in low, exhausted whispers. I turned the key. The bolt slid back with a soft thud. I pulled the key out, left it on the hallway table, and walked out my new front door, locking it firmly behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see their faces, a cocktail of shame and fury. I didn't need to hear their pathetic excuses. Their trip was just beginning. Mine was, too. And for the first time in hours, as I walked down the quiet suburban street towards a future I would build for myself, I could finally breathe.